Imagine one moment, everything feels steady. You've spent years building a life with someone you trust, the kind of bond you believe nothing could break. But with one unexpected twist, that entire world crumbles in an instant. She thought her marriage was built on love, loyalty, and honesty. But behind closed doors, her husband was hiding more than she could have ever imagined. He had gambled everything they had on the stock market, keeping the truth hidden until it was too late. When his investments went south, he didn't own up to his mistakes. Instead, he pointed the finger at her, blaming her for his failures, and in a rage, threw her out of the house. No discussion, no remorse, just a shattered dream and a door slammed shut. Left with nothing but a few belongings, she faced a crossroads. Give in to despair or find the strength to start over. Little did he know, his betrayal would set her on a path to transformation, a journey he could never have foreseen. What happened next is a story of courage, resilience, and an ending no one could have predicted, especially him. If you think you know how this story ends, keep watching, because sometimes life's most painful moments lead to the most unexpected turnarounds. Her name is Maya. She believed in loyalty, in standing by each other no matter what life threw their way. From the first day she met Tom, her husband, she felt that they were more than just a couple. They were a team, a true partnership. They'd met back in college, both young, ambitious, and full of dreams for a future together. They stayed up late studying side by side, celebrated their first jobs with excitement, and shared countless milestones. Tom's drive was one of the things she admired most about him. He was never satisfied with just enough. He was always reaching for more. Together, they scrimped, saved, sacrificed, and planned for the life they envisioned. Those early days felt like the start of something incredible. They imagined the house they'd buy one day, the places they'd travel to, the adventures they'd share. They even talked about starting a family someday. Life, for a time, was filled with endless hope and promise, and Maya believed they were building a future on a foundation of love and trust. But as the years passed, Maya started to notice subtle shifts. Tom began coming home later than usual, often appearing distracted and distant, his attention more fixed on his phone than on their conversations. When she would ask about his day, his answers became curt, almost dismissive, and he often brushed her off with vague responses. It was as if an invisible wall was slowly being built between them, one she couldn't quite understand. Then, one evening, she walked into his study to find him hunched over his laptop, eyes dark with worry. His face was tight, his jaw clenched, and he seemed deeply troubled. Maya's heart skipped a beat. She could sense something was wrong. But when she gently asked if everything was okay, he barely looked up and dismissed her concern, mumbling something about her not getting it. The coldness in his response stung, and she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. She tried to trust him, tried to believe he would share when he was ready. But doubt had already taken root. Days turned into weeks, and Maya's concerns only grew. She noticed he was checking his phone incessantly, scrolling through stock prices and muttering about market trends she didn't fully understand. Tom had always been interested in investments, but now it seemed like an obsession. And no matter how much she tried to reach him, he seemed to be slipping further away, disappearing into his own world of calculations and risks. Then came the day that would shatter everything. One evening, after months of tension building between them, Maya felt she couldn't hold back any longer. The silence, the unanswered questions, the growing distance, all of it was tearing her apart. She had always believed that, no matter how difficult things got, they would face it together. But now, it felt like she was standing at the edge of a cliff, looking down into an uncertain future, and she had to know if he'd be there beside her or not. Her heart raced as she walked into the living room where Tom sat, scrolling through his phone with an expression that was hard to read, an unreadable mixture of stress, anger, and something she couldn't quite place. She took a deep breath, steadied herself, and softly asked, "Tom, can we talk?" Tom barely looked up, but Maya pressed on, asking him directly what was going on. She hoped this might be the moment he'd finally open up to her, that he'd tell her what was causing all this strain and worry. But his face quickly darkened. Instead of a confession, instead of relief or honesty, she was met with a look of frustration she hadn't seen before. "What now, Maya?" he snapped, his tone harsh and dismissive. His words cut deeper than she'd anticipated, and it only made her more determined to get answers. Maya took a deep breath, steadying herself as she replied, "I just want to understand. You've been so distant, Tom. I feel like I'm losing you, and I don't even know why." Tom sighed, throwing his phone onto the couch beside him and rubbing his temples. "You wouldn't get it, Maya. It's not something you'd understand. I'm under pressure, real pressure. It's not about you, okay? But it is about us," she said softly. "I'm part of this, too. Whatever's going on, you don't have to go through it alone." His eyes met hers for a split second, but instead of softening, his gaze hardened. "That's the problem, Maya. You don't get it. You're supposed to support me, but instead, you're constantly on my case, adding to my stress." The accusation hit her like a slap. Her mind raced, searching for any sign that she might have missed, something she could have done differently. "I'm just trying to be there for you," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. Tom didn't seem to hear her. "Maybe if you weren't always asking questions, or if you gave me some space, I'd have figured things out by now. I'm trying to make things work for us, but you're just in the way." It felt like the ground had shifted beneath her feet. His words, the bitterness in his tone, painted a picture of a man she didn't recognize. How had they gotten to this point? And how could he possibly believe that she was the problem? "Tom," she said, struggling to keep her voice steady, "I love you. We're supposed to be a team. You don't have to face this alone. Just tell me what's going on, please." But instead of softening, Tom's frustration exploded. "I can't do this, Maya. I can't keep carrying you along with everything else weighing on me. I need to focus, and you're just making things harder." His words echoed in her mind, each one sharp and cutting. And then, before she could even process what was happening, he said something that made her heart freeze. "You need to leave." Maya stared at him, hoping she'd misheard, but the cold look in his eyes told her he meant every word. "Leave?" she whispered, disbelief lacing her voice. "You want me to leave our home?" Tom nodded, barely a flicker of emotion crossing his face. "Yes. Maybe with some distance, I could finally get back on track." She stood there, feeling the weight of his words sink in. Her mind was spinning, racing to understand how the man she had built a life with could turn on her so suddenly, so heartlessly. She wanted to scream, to demand answers, to make him see how much he was hurting her. But the shock had left her speechless. In a daze, she turned and made her way to their bedroom. Her hands trembled as she packed a small bag, barely able to comprehend what was happening. She couldn't shake the image of his face, cold and unyielding, as he told her to go. The home they had built together, the memories they had shared. It all felt like a distant dream now, slipping through her fingers. With a heavy heart, she walked back to the living room, hoping for some sign of remorse, a hint that he might change his mind. But Tom didn't even look up. The man she loved, the man who had promised to stand by her, had turned his back without a second thought. As she stepped outside, the night air hit her like a slap, bringing her back to the harsh reality of her situation. She was alone, cast out by the one person she thought she could always count on. The silence of the street was overwhelming, a stark contrast to the storm of emotions raging within her. Her mind raced with questions that had no answers. How had things come to this? How could he just throw her away, as if she meant nothing to him? And how could she move forward when everything she knew and loved had been ripped away? Maya walked away from their house, the weight of her heartbreak pressing down on her like a heavy stone. She didn't know where she was going, or what the future held. All she knew was that she had a choice to make. She could let this betrayal consume her, drag her down into despair, or she could find the strength to rebuild, to prove that she was more than what he had left her with. As she walked into the unknown, a spark ignited within her, a determination that, despite everything, she would survive this. She had been cast aside, left with nothing, but she still had herself. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough to start again. In the weeks following her abrupt departure, Maya found herself navigating a life she'd never imagined. The first few days were the hardest. She was numb with heartbreak and disbelief. The betrayal lingered like a dull ache, and the memories of her life with Tom haunted her, especially at night when she lay alone in a spare bedroom at her friend's house. But in the quiet moments, a resolve began to build within her. She realized that she couldn't allow this to destroy her, that maybe, just maybe, this was her opportunity to become stronger. With the support of her friends, Maya started taking small steps toward rebuilding her life. She updated her resume, applied for jobs, and even began researching online courses to upskill herself. It was tough, and the days felt long and daunting. Every task felt like a mountain she had to climb, but with each step, her confidence grew. For the first time, she allowed herself to think about her future without him, a future where she was in control. She began to reclaim parts of herself she had long forgotten, interests and passions she had set aside to support Tom's dreams. She picked up old hobbies like painting and gardening, reconnecting with things that brought her joy. It was as if she was rediscovering who she was, beyond just being Tom's wife. And with each small victory, she felt a sense of independence blossoming within her. Eventually, Maya realized that to truly move forward, she needed to understand her rights. She had spent years by Tom's side, and she wanted to know what she was legally entitled to. She reached out to a lawyer, nervous but determined to get the information she needed. During their meeting, Maya explained her situation, and the lawyer carefully listened, asking questions and jotting down notes. It was during this meeting that the pieces of Tom's hidden life started to come to light. Her lawyer explained that Tom's financial decisions could have severe consequences for both of them, given their marriage. Maya's stomach sank as she listened, realizing how deep Tom's troubles went. She had known about some of his investments and risky ventures, but she hadn't realized the full extent of his debt. With the lawyer's help, she accessed some of Tom's financial records, and what she found shocked her. Tom had accumulated mountains of debt, mostly due to impulsive decisions in the stock market and several ill-advised business ventures. He had leveraged everything they owned, including their home, in desperate attempts to keep his financial dreams alive. It was as though he had built a house of cards, one bad decision stacked on top of another, and now it was all crashing down. The truth was devastating, but it also fueled something within Maya. She felt an anger she had never allowed herself to feel before, anger at Tom's betrayal, at his lies, and at the way he had so casually discarded her. She had trusted him completely, and he had taken advantage of that trust in ways she could never have imagined. But now, with this knowledge, she was determined to reclaim her life and her future. While Maya was rebuilding her life, Tom's world was spiraling out of control. With Maya gone, he no longer had anyone to lean on, to confide in, or to support him when things got rough. His financial problems, which he had managed to keep hidden for so long, were now starting to catch up with him. Creditors were calling day and night, demanding payments he couldn't make. His once confident demeanor had been replaced with anxiety and desperation as he scrambled to keep his head above water. Tom's situation worsened by the day. He tried to maintain appearances, but his once glowing reputation was beginning to tarnish. Word started spreading among his colleagues and business contacts about his financial woes, and soon, the people he had once impressed with his confidence and ambition were distancing themselves from him. The empire he had tried to build was crumbling, and with it his pride. Meanwhile, Maya was transforming in ways Tom couldn't have anticipated. She had gone from being dependent on him to standing on her own 2 feet. Every challenge she faced only seemed to make her stronger. She wasn't just surviving, she was thriving. She took on a new job and was excelling in her role. Her friends rallied around her, admiring her strength and resilience as she rebuilt her life from the ground up. Maya also began attending support groups and connecting with others who had gone through similar experiences. Sharing her story and hearing others gave her a renewed sense of hope and perspective. She no longer felt alone, and with every meeting, her resolve grew stronger. She realized that her worth wasn't tied to Tom or his approval. She was her own person, capable and resilient, and she had a future ahead of her that was filled with endless possibilities. As Tom continued to spiral, Maya began to distance herself emotionally from the life they had shared. She no longer looked back with regret or longing. Instead, she looked forward with hope and excitement. She started planning for the future she wanted, one where she would be the architect of her own success and happiness. She invested in herself, attending workshops, building her network, and focusing on her personal growth. Maya was no longer the woman who had once depended on Tom to make all the decisions. She was now her own source of strength. And, as if by some poetic justice, Maya's hard work began to pay off in unexpected ways. Opportunities started coming her way, and soon she found herself in a much better position financially. Her career was flourishing, her social circle had expanded, and she was filled with a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. Tom, on the other hand, was facing the consequences of his actions. His debts were piling up, his reputation was in shambles, and he had burned bridges with those who could have helped him. In his moments of desperation, he thought about reaching out to Maya, hoping she might still have some sympathy left for him. But each time he picked up the phone, he hesitated, knowing that she had moved on without him. He was left to face the consequences of his choices, alone, and without the support he had once taken for granted. As Maya reflected on everything she had gone through, she felt a sense of peace. The pain and betrayal had once threatened to consume her, but she had come out stronger, wiser, and more resilient. She had turned her darkest moments into fuel for her own transformation, and she was now living a life that was truly her own. In the end, Maya realized that she was no longer defined by her past or by the man who had betrayed her. She had discovered a strength within herself that she never knew existed, and she was ready to face the future with confidence, knowing that she was capable of anything she set her mind to. In an unexpected turn of events, Maya's phone buzzed one evening with a message from Tom. It had been months since their split, and she felt a rush of mixed emotions: surprise, apprehension, and even a touch of nostalgia. Tom was reaching out, and as much as she had tried to move on, the memories of their life together flooded back. He wanted to meet. He was struggling, desperate, and finally ready to ask for help. Maya felt a twinge of sympathy for him, but she also felt a surge of empowerment. The woman who had been cast aside and discarded was no longer the same. She agreed to meet him, knowing this would be a defining moment for both of them. When the day arrived, Maya sat in a quiet cafe, her heart racing but her resolve unwavering. She arrived a little early, using the time to gather her thoughts and remind herself of how far she had come. Tom walked in, looking haggard and worn, a shadow of the man she once knew. His confident demeanor was gone, replaced by a palpable vulnerability that almost surprised her. As he approached, she noticed the hesitance in his steps, the way he hesitated before sitting down across from her. Maya felt a strange mix of pity and empowerment as she watched him. This was not the man who had tossed her out of their home without a second thought. This was a man who had lost everything and was now seeking redemption, though she wondered if it was for her or himself. "Hey," Tom began, his voice shaky. "I know I messed up, and I've been thinking a lot. I'm really sorry for everything that happened. I need your help." Maya met his gaze, the memories of their past swirling in her mind. But instead of the old emotions surfacing, she felt something different: clarity. "Tom," she said slowly, "do you even understand what you did to me? You didn't just lose money. You destroyed my trust. You made me feel like I was the problem, like I was the one holding you back." She continued, her voice steady. "You cast me aside like I was nothing, and it took me months to piece myself back together. I had to find my own strength, something I didn't even know I had." Maya paused, letting her words sink in. She wasn't the helpless woman who needed saving. She was a force of nature, and she was ready to take charge of her narrative. Tom's face fell as he absorbed her words. "I was in a dark place," he confessed, his voice breaking. "I thought I could handle it all on my own. I thought." "You thought wrong," Maya interjected, not out of anger, but from a place of newfound strength. And the worst part is that you took your frustrations out on me. You didn't see the damage you were causing, and I'm not just going to sit here and let you blame your failures on me anymore." With each word she spoke, Maya felt the power shift in the room. She no longer needed his validation or approval. She had built a new life, one filled with purpose, and she was no longer interested in the toxic remnants of their past. Tom looked defeated, the weight of his mistakes pressing heavily on his shoulders. "I just want to fix things. I thought maybe we could start over," he said, his voice almost pleading. Maya shook her head. "You can't fix what's broken by pretending it never happened. I've moved on, Tom. I've found my own way, and I'm not going back to the life we had. I deserve better, and so do you." For the first time, Maya realized she was saying goodbye, not just to Tom, but to the version of herself that had felt unworthy and dependent. She was reclaiming her narrative and walking away from the shadows of their past. "I wish you well," she said, her voice calm but firm. "I hope you find what you need, but it won't be with me. I'm not the woman you knew. I'm stronger now, and I'm not going to let you pull me back into a life filled with deceit and heartache." With that, Maya stood up, a wave of empowerment washing over her. She walked out of that cafe, not as the woman who had been hurt, but as someone who had finally taken control of her own destiny. For the first time, she was free. Free of Tom's influence, and free to embrace the life she had fought so hard to rebuild. And as she stepped into the sunlight, she felt a profound sense of peace. Reflecting on her journey, Maya felt a sense of peace she hadn't known before. What had started as heartbreak had transformed into a powerful lesson in resilience. She had faced one of the hardest moments of her life, navigating the dark waters of betrayal, rejection, and self-doubt. Yet, here she stood, stronger and more self-assured than ever. The nights of sleeplessness and worry had faded, replaced by a newfound clarity about her worth. She realized that her identity wasn't tied to her relationship with Tom. It was built on her passions, her dreams, and her ability to overcome challenges. The process of rebuilding her life had unveiled strengths she never knew she possessed. Through every setback, she had learned to stand tall, to advocate for herself, and to embrace the possibility of a brighter future. Maya's story serves as a reminder that even when life takes unexpected turns, those twists often lead us exactly where we need to be. She learned that adversity can be a catalyst for growth. The moment she was cast out of her home became the turning point that pushed her to rediscover who she was and what she wanted from life. She had started to believe in herself again, reclaiming her power and focusing on her aspirations. As she looked toward the future, Maya felt a surge of hope. She had dreams of travel, of starting her own business, and even of nurturing relationships that uplifted her. Each day was a new opportunity, a blank canvas where she could paint her life with vibrant colors, no longer dulled by fear or dependency. The past would always be a part of her story, but it wouldn't define her. She had transformed her pain into purpose, allowing it to fuel her ambition rather than hinder her spirit. Maya was ready to embrace the unknown, unafraid of what lay ahead, knowing that she had the strength to navigate whatever challenges life threw her way. In the end, Maya found that true liberation came not from escaping her past, but from facing it head-on and emerging stronger. Her journey was a testament to the human spirit's resilience, showcasing how, even in our darkest moments, we can find the light within ourselves to forge a new path. As she moved forward, Maya carried with her the lessons of her journey, the power of self-discovery, the importance of standing up for oneself, and the belief that every ending can lead to a remarkable new beginning. And so, with her heart full of hope and her spirit unbreakable, Maya stepped into her future, ready to embrace all the possibilities life had in store. If you found Maya's journey inspiring, be sure to hit that subscribe button and leave a comment below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And don't miss out on our next video, where we'll share more incredible stories that remind us of the strength we all have within. Keep believing in yourself and join us for the next uplifting adventure.